My name is Philip Colbert and I am the Lobster Man. This is my studio, it's a mess. It's inside the bin. Yeah, messy.
Where did the crustacean come from?
The crustacean, yeah. Deep from the bottom of my imagination. So basically I was always into like symbols and symbols and icons, things that like on a language level people can understand or like represent, you know, something. So I was always like, for example, obsessed by Marcel Duchamp's urinal or the fountain image because it was like, such an icon of contemporary art. The idea of that sort of one piece that created a whole new dialogue of like thinking about art. So in that sort of way, I always liked the lobster as a symbol of surrealism. I would draw these little cartoon lobsters. To the extent then I started making like lobster dresses, lobster suits, you know, lobster chairs, and so people started calling me like the Lobster Man. And at that point, like I really just assumed that identity.
So it's sort of continuing on the lineage from sort of surrealism, Dali.
Exactly. So it was already like part of like had a very strong association already in art history, as a symbol, as a thing. So in a way, it's just like taking that on and really like taking it forward, like pushing. And I've always liked the idea of surrealism in terms of, in a way, like, you know, I'm definitely inspired by this idea of like bringing the artistic, the freedoms within art into the world and back into reality, because I think that escapism is part of the art's function, you know, to bring in a sense of fantasy into reality. So, yeah.
Do you sort of like the kind of the absurdist elements in surrealism, or is
definitely that? 100%. Like I like the absurdist elements because I think they help to pull the rug under your feet with the sort of seriousness that we apply to reality, like the sense of rules and sense of like, you know, and I think that humor and parody is an amazing way of like shaking the cage of our understanding. Do you know what I mean? Like people build structures, like and they apply a lot of serious meaning to those structures, but actually those structures are quite flimsy. So, you know, to actually often like the highest form of meaning is to just rattle the cage. It's like a Wittgenstein-like type idea.
Oh, interesting.
So I quite like humor in that sense because it's like the mirror, the cracked mirror, you know, like of reality. So it just helps to, and I think there's something like liberating in terms of in the freedom sense, the idea of, you know, I guess that in that sense I'm like quite punkish in the sense of like just, you know, take piss of the system, you know, parody the system because actually it's like there's a free message there.
Yeah. I think you sort of just cracked into your philosophy degree then, just mentioning Wittgenstein, because you've got an MA in philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. No, for me, like, studying philosophy was like, it was the one thing that really woke me up when I was a teenager. Like when I started reading, I came across a book by Friedrich Nietzsche, Human Ultra Human, and it was like, before that I'd been like a total, you know, living in my like dreamland. Like I was totally detached from school or like academics and stuff, not at all motivated. And then I read this book and it really like flicked a switch, where I suddenly was like, actually, you know, I could look at things and look at the system and look at the hierarchy within the school and the things I was really not, like, really uninspired by, and I suddenly like, started thinking about things and suddenly started questioning things and sort of, I guess it's like this what I'm saying about like, you know, when you start to objectively understand everything as like a system rather than fact, if things are actually totally a matter of hierarchy and rules and stuff, which are all completely bendable or changeable. So I guess that there is something liberating in that sense.
So we go from Nietzsche to Wittgenstein in that I guess Nietzsche's nihilism, whereas Wittgenstein is you are what you can envisage, sort of. Approach.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of went personally. What my journey was like philosophy went from like being obsessed with Nietzsche then into like Hegel, which is like this big systemizer. I was really drawn to the German 19th century movement. Yeah. Like the more cynical ones to the more like positive ones.
Bit of Heidegger.
Yeah, Schopenhauer. Yeah. So you studied it?
Well, only from on a pop level.
Yeah.
I'm a big Slavoj Žižek fan.
Yeah, amazing.
So he's always you know, throwing in where his things from.
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely interesting to look at that school of philosophy and thought, because I guess in the days of Dali and what have you, it was I guess what are the origins of surrealism at their time? Where were they getting their?
Yeah, I guess there was like, it was a whole movement, I guess, of a reaction against like an establishment, and I guess there was also coming in poetry and music. There was like many angles towards I guess, and also in the past there'd been such an authoritative idea of what art was, and
Yeah.
such and that was gilded, like guarded
Yeah.
by the authorities of power.
Well, yeah.
And so there was something to fight against more. Like today, obviously, there's like we've had that whole movement in a way. So, and there's been so many movements for and against, and
Yeah.
So that battle is like slightly different.
But almost art as activism now is as relevant as it was almost then.
Yeah, insofar as the systems of power today are actually very more powerful, or like super powerful, like
Yeah.
and they're actually more of like it's like the systems, the way that we consume information on social media and all these things. There is actually big like systems at play, which create like trends of taste, and
Yeah.
creativity is really going down.
Yeah.
When actually it should go up. You think it go up because you think everyone has social media, so they can have their own platforms creatively and their own outlets, and they can connect people, but actually it goes down. So it's interesting how, the power structure is very controlling on people.
So I guess all we have is the power of that image in a way, even if we're existing in a controlled goldfish bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, I guess just trying to pull away and break from these things, like, yeah.
So, from philosophy to fashion, how did we get there?
It's just, I guess I wanted to, like, come back to reality, and I wanted to do something very, very big, very, very digestible, very, interactive, something very real, because I guess I was always thinking very conceptually about stuff, and so I like the idea of something very, very tangible, that could function in the world somehow. And that's how I guess I got into this whole idea of like art and fashion, the crossover.
Yeah.
This idea of like branded products / art, having a brand in a way. I was always interested in that idea of the concept behind the artwork, and a brand is effectively that, it's a signature, but it's
Sure.
like a more elaborate signature idea.
But it's sort of through postmodern gaze, isn't it? Like
Exactly, within the after Warhol, etc. So I was really interested in this idea of like, and also I liked wearable art too, because for me that was like a new medium of, because people think fashion, but actually I was not really interested in fashion, because that's like a whole system in itself.
Sure.
I was more interested in the idea of using the idea of clothing as a medium of art, because like there'd been lots of references to that, such as like Diaghilev's Ballet Russe, the very literal example of Yves Saint Laurent taking Mondrian and putting it on a dress.
Yeah.
This idea of your value system being art, but clothing, rather than being fashion. So I was interested in that, and did spent a lot of time like playing around with those ideas. But ultimately, I guess I came back into the arts sphere, because the thing with fashion is that I love products and I love merchandising. It's still very much part of my vision as an artist, but the having a dialogue from standing in the fashion space is hard, because it's not because the rules there are different. So even if you put a flag up saying this is artwork, you just get trampled on, because like you've got delivery time schedules, like seasons, all that bullshit, which just sort of takes away that opportunity of the dialogue being meaningful. So whereas being able to also have the time and space to work on pictures and imagery, and like was something that I would guess I was frustrated with in the design space, which I guess pushed me into like painting and trying to push the dialogue that way.
Last point on your fashion approaches, but I kind of see a bit of a sort of Brechtian influence in your clothing.
Yeah, Brecht, which
I mean, with Brechtian theatre was all about almost making alienation devices, like hello, I'm a theatre set, hello, I'm a piece of clothing.
Yeah, and they're very, very literal. Yeah, but I like that sense of literalness, because it's like why I took the obvious icons of art, because it's like I wanted to take the idea of something that was art, obviously, and turn it into like a wearable piece.
Yeah.
It's like that sense of, my paintings are very much like that too, in terms of using very literal language.
Yeah.
And trying to use that language to communicate, rather than delving into something that's potentially more abstract.
Yeah.
And potentially getting lost in translation. Like I like the idea of that's why I love appropriation, because it's about embracing like a common language to an extent.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
so,
I mean, as you, I guess your first approach has always been an iconographic symbol, and then from there it's taking everyone on a journey with that lobster.
Yeah, exactly. So whether it's the lobster narrator or that character, but even just like in the language of the paintings, like using lots of referenced ideas within art history or brands.
Yeah.
Is using it's like communicating with very powerful words, words that you know mean something immediately, and you like if I was a poet and I just gave you a monologue right now and I started using words that like I knew were deeply meaningful for you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And immediately would evoke certain feelings and emotive ideas in your head. So it's like if I'm trying to communicate with painting, and I'm trying to avoid getting lost in just the bubble of painting itself.
Yeah.
And I want to actually have like try and hit some meaning with you know, with someone that's maybe not necessarily from an art background.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that. I like anyway. I guess, especially with these new paintings, they're almost trapped within the plastic of language anyway. Like the aesthetic is very everything is plasticated.
Yeah.
So if you look at all the references, all the like the Legers or the Bacons, they're all become plasticated. So they're all language, but they're all like trapped within language.
Sure.
If that makes sense, like so they're like a play on art history and the idea, the dialogue within painting, but they're also like trapped within that at the same time, which is almost a brand commodity, you know, effect that happens in contemporary culture. Anything becomes in any way consumed, like even if it's very, very guarded high art, it still becomes effectively a consumable product and a brand product, and it still uses the same devices of desire, value, monetary value, all that stuff, which puts us the same in the fashion category. Yeah. Effectively. So I quite like the fact that in reality that platform is occurring with everything in the common language, in the common marketplace, effectively. Sure. So it becomes plasticated in that way.
You've just come back from Los Angeles, where you had your first solo show there. How was that to be in an environment where it very much was like an epicenter of contemporary pop culture?
It was great in the sense that actually my time in Los Angeles I spent there before was really influential on my aesthetic. Like if you look at a lot of the paintings I'm doing, like the desert, like Joshua Tree landscape, some became like the world of lobster land. It became where my lobster lived. It was like, you know, when that language was evolving, it was like for some reason that the landscape of Joshua Tree like evoked this sort of Dali-esque feeling in my head. So it's like just really stuck in my head, and so when I was painting the compositions, it was sort of the lobster just lived there, and then he lived in, like, and I'd had this idea of building a cactus castle house, and he lived there, and it almost sort of made sense, and all these elements. Like I'd always liked the yellow submarine image, so suddenly he starts driving a yellow submarine car, and all these different elements that were in my visual world, then I'll start like taking a physical place in this cartoon land, and so that influence of LA was like very influential in that, and I think I've always been inspired by like that, the branding, like the signage, that pop sensibility that LA has, and obviously has a very strong art historical, you know, associations with Hockney and like Ed Ruscha and stuff. John Baldessari definitely had a pop relevance. Yeah.
Speaking of pop, what do you sort of see the kind of role as a pop artist now as?
I think as a culture we're more pop than ever. It's like if you look at the trajectory of like, you know, from Warhol to now, it's like we're hyper Warhols today. It's not like after Warhol pop disappeared. Yeah. It's actually like it's just putting your finger on it, but we are more pop than ever. So as a communicator, someone communicating, then I think, or trying to reflect a sense of, you know, reality of contemporary culture, or the experiencing contemporary culture, then I feel that being pop is very relevant. I think some people obviously mislabel pop as like a fashion idea, just like a rehash of 60s ideas, but in my mind it's a much deeper rooted philosophical understanding of how culture, the reality of culture. Yeah. So in that sense I think pop is still the most relevant art in terms of our time. Doesn't mean you can't be an amazing abstract painter, but I mean pop culture, pop art is the language that connects with the most people, and has this, you know, and then somehow our experience of is still quite a defining part of being human. Yeah.
What was your favourite burger joint in LA?
Obviously In-N-Out Burger is really good, but there was the one which it is on Sunset Strip. What the hell is the name of it? It's an amazing like Jetson style building.
Astro Burger.
Not Astro, another one. it's just, you know, if you're at Chateau Marmont, let's say, and you continue down Sunset Strip to walk past, maybe it's like before you get to Soho House.
Mel's. That's it, Mel's Diner.
Yeah, Mel's Diner. That's an amazing place.
Yeah.
But also, there's a one that was very close to my show as well. That has a Warhol wallpaper of the cows.
Okay.
Do you know that one? It's like literally a block away. It's Shah, do you remember the name of that burger joint? It was the diner next to this space in LA for the show. That I had my meetings in every day. Swingers, yeah. Swingers also excellent.
Nice. Top tips.
LA does the best diners. It's insane. Mel's Diner is that the architecture of that building is insane.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's such an artistic experience. Like I guess the evolution of this like food experience in such a branded, managed, well-run thing with such an amazing aesthetic. Incredible. And it really was like thinking back at those, like how pioneering those were, and like how we still riff off that today.
Yeah.
As an experience, like incredible.
But that Mel's in particular was that was the original drive-in, I think, and then McDonald's saw that and kind of took.
Yeah, no, but the design of the building is amazing. The sign, incredible. Yeah, it's a real masterpiece, that design of that building.
So I guess we've touched on Dali, we've touched on Warhol. What other kind of artists do you see as your kind of spirit animals that might be a bit off the beaten track?
I really liked, and he was definitely influential in my thinking as a painter, but Rosenquist, in terms of the idea of taking, pop, the idea of pop and everyday imagery, but then like thinking like a painter and pushing that rather than just copying, let's say, because copying an image and translating it onto as a painting, like obviously like for example, early Lichtenstein's, where he copied the comic book idea. For me, that was actually less interesting. Like after I've seen a few of those, it's like sort of bored by it. But the thing is, if you look at the way that Lichtenstein have developed, then in terms of started bringing in that sort of painterly dialogue of abstraction and like breaking down the image, so it was like a hybrid between like a comic book approach to art historical painting.
Yeah.
Like that struggle with painting for meaning, and the relevance of painting. So I like that tension between, like pushing painting and with the language of everyday imagery. So that using the language of these everyday elements, those building blocks, a bit like the words, and then the painting is the construction of the sentences. And like doing new things with the sentences, and evoking new meaning, new opportunities for painting. So like that idea. So like for me, Rosenquist was a really important pop painter in that sense and did really amazing things that then influenced people like David Sally and stuff that, these are like Sigmund Polka, really interesting painter, Martin Kippenberger, Albert Oehlen, those sort of people that painted like pushing painting. So I like that movement definitely. So I think of myself somehow like as a follow on from that, trying to push the idea of what painting can be.
But also within a context of having a consistent visual language to some extent.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the consistent visual language for me is really important because it's that journey and that storytelling consistency. I mean, you can look at someone like Kippenberger, who's an amazing artist. Obviously, sometimes jumps around from very different things, but because I quite like the idea of my work still being within the brand world, because I think it's useful in a democratic sense, rather than just being a dialogue specifically for the art audience. I like trying to bridge this dialogue with the art audience, but also make it very accessible, so the message is there and the spirit is there for people that don't necessarily have that training.
Voltaire said there's no such thing as originality, just judicial imitation. Do you agree we should all embrace that concept more?
Yeah, I think again it's like if language is all about a discussion with the past, and it's the language is a conversation because it evolves over time and it takes people to to say things and be recorded and for it to be interesting and said again and debated and discussed. So and that's what art is. If you look at it, why is art interesting? Art is interesting because it's existed over hundreds of years and there's libraries full of books on it, and it's a thing. Regardless of whether you think painting's even relevant or not. The point is it's a discussion. You can go to a library and you can read about it. It's a subject in itself, and so I think that I guess my long-winded response is just that I think it's really interesting, that dialogue, and it's interesting to try and push that dialogue and do new things with it. And I think it's about embracing the language of art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been saving my my lobster-related questions to the very end. There's two here.
I'm not a lobster expert.
There's three. No, I wasn't.
Naive lobster.
I wasn't going to start
People assume that I'm
quizzing
a
you.
lobster expert. Yeah.
Do you still eat lobster?
I've never ate lobster. I've never eaten lobster in my life. I think that gives me integrity as a lobster.
Wow.
It's like imagine you met, I just think if you're meeting like a lobster character, you shouldn't eat lobster.
No, exactly.
It's a bit perverse if you did.
What about prawns?
Yeah, I've eaten lots of prawns, but I don't particularly like prawns. I actually don't eat any seafood really.
Okay.
So
That's really commitment to the
I'm quite a
cause.
legitimate lobster.
Yeah. Fair enough. Are you the lobster? Yeah.
Yeah. Like I tell people I became an artist when I became a lobster.
Yeah.
Because for me conceptually, the lobster as a sort of distillation of artistic freedom is like the fact that lots of artists have this in the past. They've embraced their personas define the value of their art. Let's say lots of examples where the persona of the artist is very meaningful on the work, like informs the work. Whether it's Duchamp, it's all supported by theory. With the value of that, the Fountain or any of his other works, so very much supported by the character and the theory of the thing. So the function of the persona is very important in art. It always has been in a way, but more so even now. So that's existed already, but I just like the idea of like the cartoon character artist gives it a whole new realm of possibilities, because rather than my art persona having to exist in a way in reality, it can exist in my own world. Like so, Lobsterland was created after the lobster, because by having an artistic persona, then he can have his own world. And then, for example, he's just now been signed by Christian Louboutin to model Christian Louboutin's new menswear trainers. So it's like the freedom of that character to start even integrating with the world and playing around and becoming my real persona.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting, that relation between the freedom of complete freedom in his artistic world and having that dialogue with art history in this cartoon world is a fresh space for art, I feel. Or it's a place where I can make art somehow fresher and more meaningful and like more interactive and more engaging. But it also can come back into the world quite interestingly.
Yeah.
So that's why I guess I like the meaning of the character.
And you're kind of taking the curatorial journey of what you see as important visually from the last sort of 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I make a breakdown of, in a way, the brands and the logos of art history, or some of the key points, bring them into my world and like play around with them. But then also I can, take the people on a fresh journey as well. Because I like the idea that when obviously I'm developing like Lobsterland is like an app and a game and stuff like that, and we're rebuilding the actual whole world in this museum in China, and the idea is that it's a way of like experiencing a new, like a new chapter of artistic imagination. I mean, not that it's not like entirely original. Obviously, people like Walt Disney created a whole language, but in my mind, my world is very much being done in dialogue with art history, rather than just as an animation in itself.
Sure. So my final point, as I've taken far too much of your time, Jeff Koons yesterday announced that he's retired from art.
It's a fashionable thing to say he retired. Who else retired? Like Duchamp said he had retired for a while as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my mum says...
Maurizio Catalan's retired.
Who?
Maurizio Catalan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my mum says that artists never die. So do you think that you sort of, by virtue of being an artist, putting ideas out there, it's not like you can just stop them?
Yeah, I think, it's an interesting thing. I wonder why, I don't know why Jeff Koons announced he's retired. I don't know whether he feels he just wants to take a break, or I don't know why. It's a funny, in my mind it's strange, the idea of retiring, because the whole idea of making art in my mind is like it's part of living, because it's pushing freedoms of what life is about, but I guess when you become very commercially established and the pressures of all those elements, like of having all those galleries and museums and all the critics constantly evaluating you, might become too much that you was one space for that. Because I think in a way I've often talk about this connection between fashion and art, and how the art world's become very influenced by the fashion world in terms of the effect of brands on the fact that all artists are doomed to being brands effectively, whether they embrace it or not. And also the system of like consumption and social media, and in fact the fan base, and effectively people are also very critical through. And I think often artists can take that quite badly.
Yeah.
Where they're like, your work sells for a ton of money and suddenly everyone's criticising you for it. And so maybe people just need to step away from it, that whole thing, because they put their own headspace by it. I don't know. For me, it's like the simple formula should be that obviously art is just a journey of living. But
it's becoming a headache.
Yeah.
Take a break.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Philip, thank
maybe
you
that's
very
making art anyway, because it's like even the thinking space is making art. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for talking to me.
Of course, yeah.
Nice one, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks
it.
for coming by.